The tensions in the Korean Peninsula has some South Korean politicians considering the idea of bringing American nuclear weapons to their soil. While not everyone in the country is on board, this wouldn't be the first time U.S. nukes were deployed in South Korea. RT's Alex Mihailovich is in Toronto with more. So, Alex, up until 1991, South Korea had a sizable cache of U.S. nuclear weapons on its soil. What can you tell us about that?
Well, a sizable cache indeed. I mean, check out this chart. It basically tells you everything. At the height, around the Cold War, the Korean War itself, we're looking at about 950 warheads of all types and sizes in South Korea. And that was because of the issue that was going on around that time. So President Truman himself, he was considering using nukes against the Chinese during the Korean War, so much so that he actually sent 8 warheads to Okinawa and sent some nuclear-ready bombers in that direction as well. So this is nothing new when it comes to the Korean Peninsula. Now, after this time, a lot of the weapons were removed, and we're talking about the missiles, we're talking about the cruise missiles, the surface-to-surface, but tons were left behind, and that's what we'd call today probably tactical nukes. I mean, that's the more common term. Now, these things could be launched as something as simple as a howitzer. They had cool names like Davy Crockett and Honest John and the Matador, but these weapons obviously are nuclear weapons and are very lethal. A howitzer, in fact, could shoot out a weapon that had around the same megaton load, so around 15 megatons, as what we saw in Hiroshima. So this is no small payload when you're thinking about it, to take out troop formations. Now, the range was about 5 miles to about 15 miles, and then, of course, you got the planes that could come in, and they could bomb. Those bombs, obviously, were much bigger. We're talking about 200 kilotons with a 70-mile range if we're talking about missiles shot from South Korea to North Korea or any of the offending areas. Now, in the 1970s, that's when most of the stuff got phased out, and they were just left behind with those tactical nukes. And then in 1991, because of the non-proliferation agreement and pushing it forward, the United States decided to pull all their nuclear weapons out of the Korean Peninsula.
And so South Korea admits that it had a covert nuclear weapons program for years. How far did it get in developing nukes?
A very worrisome program, especially for the United States. So we know that during that time, it was a dictator who ran that country, South Korea. So military dictatorship is not someplace that you would like to see nuclear weapons. So they actually were moving along developing the nuclear weapons until the Non-Proliferation Treaty Agreement, which Canada and the U.S. pushed Korea basically to step back and stop trying to create nuclear weapons. Now, there's a lot of talk that even after that agreement was signed, the nuclear weapons program continued in South Korea, and that in fact today, because of the knowledge that they have, within 18 months they could turn around and build a nuclear bomb. So surprisingly, a lot of Koreans actually support that. Poll after poll and year after year up to now, we're seeing that there's a 60% support rate amongst South Koreans to have what they're calling peaceful nuclear bombs to use as a deterrent against the North. I've never heard of a peaceful nuclear bomb, but that's what they're calling it. And so this program, according to officials, does not exist anymore. But that type of turnaround time says that South Korea is pretty advanced when it comes to nuclear weapons.
And what's currently happening in South Korea when it comes to the nuclear weapons debate?
Well, and a debate indeed, and not only from politicians, but down to the street. The fact was, with politicians, we're hearing that even General Mattis has talked to some politicians within and other officials within Korea, or South Korea, I should say, about this idea of bringing nukes into that direction. But if you hear from the foreign minister, and here is a quick quote from her, a very different idea. She says, "We have not discussed the issue with the U.S. It is difficult to talk about a hypothetical situation, but South Korea and the U.S. have been closely cooperating in all matters, and we will continue to do so in the future." Now, surprise, surprise, in the United States, you have people like John McCain saying, hey, this might be a good idea, send weapons that way. But as it stands right now, there is absolutely nothing official to the extent that we know how South Korea is protected when it comes to nuclear weapons. It is still under the U.S. so-called umbrella of nuclear protection. So there are weapons aimed in the right direction if South Korea does get hit. The U.S. protects Japan as well and all of its allies in that region. But as it stands right now, South Korea officially has no nuclear weapons on its soil. But as we can see, that could change very, very quickly.
Alex Mihailovich in Toronto for us. Thank you.
Thank you.